The Galactic Council believed humanity was nothing more than a forgotten footnote in history. 500,000 years ago, they had vanished, wiped out by a war they could not win. The great alien empires spoke of them in whispers, calling them reckless, weak, and doomed from the start. No one questioned the official records. The Council had ensured that no traces of human civilization remained. Planets once ruled by humans were repopulated by other species. Earth itself was reduced to a lifeless rock, stripped of all its history. It was as if humanity had never existed. But history has a way of refusing to be erased. Deep within the galactic core, in a region no species dared enter, something stirred. A massive structure, hidden inside the heart of a dead star, suddenly came to life. It had remained dormant for 500,000 years, its purpose long forgotten. Now, it was waking up. Inside the structure, an ancient intelligence stirred. It remembered. A single light flickered on, illuminating rows upon rows of silent warships. Massive black vessels covered in dust from centuries of stillness. Their engines, long thought dead, hummed to life. A signal was sent, echoing across the void. The message was simple. Humanity is not gone. A new threat. On the capital planet of the Galactic Council, a group of alien officials gathered in a grand chamber, discussing trade routes, territorial disputes, and politics. It was a normal day, until an alarm blared across the room. A communications officer rushed in, his pale blue skin almost turning white with fear. "We have received an unknown signal from the galactic core," he announced. "It carries a human signature." Silence filled the chamber. Then laughter. "Impossible," said one of the elder members, waving a hand dismissively. "Humans are extinct. This is likely a malfunction." The officer swallowed hard. "I thought the same, but the signal repeats a single phrase. Humanity is not gone." The room went quiet. The laughter stopped. The Council's Supreme Chancellor, a towering reptilian alien, leaned forward, his golden eyes narrowing. "Trace the source," he commanded. "Send a probe. If this is a trick, I want to know who is behind it." The officer nodded and left in a hurry. But deep down, every member of the Council felt something they hadn't felt in millennia. Fear. The awakening. Far away, in the silent depths of space, the probe launched by the Council approached the unknown structure. It passed through layers of ancient defenses, long inactive, now stirring from their slumber. As the probe moved closer, its sensors detected something massive inside the dead star. Thousands of ships, warships of a long-lost era. But before it could transmit more data, a flash of energy. The probe was gone. Inside the structure, a voice, calm, precise, and ancient, spoke for the first time in eons. "System check complete. Fleet status. Operational. Awaiting command." The AI had waited long enough. It was time. Humanity had not been forgotten. It was time to remind the galaxy who they were. The Galactic Council's Supreme Chancellor stood at the center of the command chamber, his scaled hands tightening into fists. The probe they had sent to investigate the unknown signal had vanished. No debris, no final transmission, just silence. "This is a declaration of war," he hissed, his golden eyes burning with fury. "If the humans still exist, they must be destroyed before they rise again." The Council members murmured in agreement. 500,000 years ago, humanity had been wiped out, yet their technology had always been unpredictable, their resilience unmatched. If even a fragment of their power remained, it could spell disaster for the galaxy. Within hours, an elite fleet was assembled, 100 of the most advanced warships, each bristling with weapons. Their mission was simple: find the source of the signal, erase all traces of humanity. The Phantom Fleet. Light years away, deep within the galactic core, the darkness shifted. They were coming. Inside the massive hidden structure, thousands of ships stood in perfect formation, their metal hulls absorbing the dim glow of distant stars. These were not ordinary warships. They were humanity's final legacy, built for a war that had been lost, waiting for an enemy that had already declared victory. And now, after 500,000 years, vengeance was within reach. The ancient AI, known as Overseer, processed the incoming data. Enemy ships were moving fast, unaware of the trap they were flying into. The old human commanders had planned for this. They knew the enemy would come searching, full of arrogance, believing humanity was nothing more than dust. They were wrong. Overseer activated the first sequence. Silent commands flowed through the network, waking the fleet from its ancient slumber. Massive engines rumbled to life. Weapons systems, long unused, calibrated with lethal precision. Shields pulsed with raw energy. Then, for the first time in 500,000 years, the fleet moved. The Council's arrival. The enemy fleet exited hyperspace near the galactic core. The Supreme Chancellor's warship, the Tyrant's Will, led the formation. Their scanners picked up nothing but a massive dead star floating in the void. "Where is the source of the signal?" one of the officers questioned, his voice uneasy. A silence stretched across the bridge. The space around them was too quiet. No asteroid fields, no debris, no sign of any civilization. Just the dying pulse of the dead star. The Supreme Chancellor frowned. "Scan again. I want every." The shadows moved. At first, they thought it was a trick of the light. Then, the darkness unfolded. Massive ships, black as the void, emerged from the depths of space. They had been there the whole time, waiting, watching. Then, boom! The first Council warship exploded, torn apart before it could even activate its shields. Panic erupted across the enemy fleet. "We're under attack." The Supreme Chancellor barely had time to react before another explosion rocked his ship. The enemy had fired no warning shots, sent no demands. This was not a battle. This was an execution, the return of humanity. The Overseer observed the chaos with cold efficiency. The first strike had been a success. The enemy had arrived expecting an easy victory, but they had stepped into a battlefield where humanity had already won before the first shot was fired. And this was only the beginning. As the last surviving Council ships tried to retreat, a transmission echoed through space, broadcast on every frequency in the galaxy. A voice, ancient yet clear, spoke 3 words. "We have returned." The Supreme Chancellor gripped the command chair as another explosion rocked the Tyrant's Will. Screens flickered with emergency alerts, shields failing, weapons offline, fleet in disarray. "This is impossible," one of his officers screamed. "We outnumbered them. We had the advantage." They did, but it didn't matter. The human fleet, if that's what these ships even were, had torn through their formation like a blade through flesh. Silent, merciless, unstoppable. The Chancellor turned to his tactical officer. "How many ships remain?" The officer hesitated, then whispered, "Only 15. Out of 100. His blood ran cold. A war fought before it began. The fleet had arrived expecting to hunt down a ghost. Instead, they had awakened a force beyond understanding. The ships were massive, sleek, and nearly invisible against the darkness of space. Their weapons did not fire conventional energy beams or missiles. They shredded through matter itself, breaking apart warships as if they were made of paper. And their movements, they didn't chase. They didn't pursue. They simply appeared where they needed to be, their attacks already landing before the Council ships even had time to react. As if they had already fought this battle before. The last stand. The surviving fleet had no choice. Running was impossible. Their jump drives had been disabled the moment the battle started, without a single human weapon even touching them. "We need to surrender," an officer shouted. "To whom?" Another screamed back. "They haven't even spoken to us." The Chancellor refused. He was Supreme Chancellor Drenvar of the Galactic Council. He would not kneel to a ghost fleet. He pointed a clawed finger at the central screen. Fire everything we have. I don't care if you need to overload the reactors. Bring them down. The remaining warships complied. Beams of plasma, antimatter missiles, and devastating fusion warheads lit up the void, racing toward the human fleet. For the first time, one of the human ships took a direct hit. The explosion was blinding. The Chancellor's heart pounded. Had they finally damaged them? But as the fire faded, the truth became clear. The ship remained untouched. No burns, no cracks, nothing. The Chancellor's blood ran cold. How? Then the realization struck him. They had fired their weapons into the past. These ships weren't just fast. They were rewriting the battle before it even happened. The final message. A transmission finally came through. Every screen, every communication device hijacked. The entire Galactic Council, across thousands of planets, saw it. A human figure stood in the darkness, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light. His voice was calm, too calm. 500,000 years ago, you thought you ended us. You erased our worlds, slaughtered our people, and rewrote history. You believed humanity was gone. The Chancellor felt the voice more than he heard it. It echoed through his very soul. You were wrong. The human figure leaned forward. Now, we erase you. The transmission ended, and the massacre began. The Supreme Chancellor couldn't breathe. The message from the human specter still echoed in his mind. You were wrong. Now, we erase you. The bridge of the tyrant's will was filled with a thick, oppressive silence. His officers stood frozen, eyes wide, minds shattered by the impossible reality before them. The Galactic Council's finest fleet, a force that had subjugated entire civilizations, was being annihilated. And not just in battle. Their very existence was being erased. Vanishing ships erased history. The lieutenant gasped. Sir, ships are disappearing. The Chancellor spun around. Destroyed. The lieutenant shook his head, his voice trembling. No, sir. They were never there. The holographic fleet display was changing, not because ships were being destroyed, but because they had never existed in the first place. Entire vessels, whole squadrons, were blinking out of reality, their records vanishing from the logs as if they had never been built, never been crewed, never even been imagined. The officers began whispering in fear. This wasn't just warfare. This was Erasure. This was retribution from beyond time itself. A desperate escape. The Chancellor grabbed his command panel. Get us out of here. Now. But, sir, now. The remaining warships of the Galactic Council turned and ran. Some tried to warp jump, but their engines shut down before they could. Others tried to engage cloaking fields, only for their systems to fail instantly. The human fleet didn't even chase them. They simply rewrote reality so the Council ships had nowhere to go. One by one, the ships vanished, until only the tyrant's will remained. The Chancellor watched, shaking. This wasn't a battle. This was a correction. He had to warn the Council. He had to tell them. The final transmission. A new message came through. The same human figure appeared, his eyes cold, his presence looming. Your time is over. The Chancellor opened his mouth to plead, to offer surrender, to beg for mercy. The figure's expression did not change. You never existed. And then, everything vanished. Darkness, silence, a void where once stood an empire. The Galactic Council's grand fleet was gone, not destroyed, erased. In the ruins of space, only the ghostly silhouettes of human warships remained, their hulls untouched by time, their presence an unnatural defiance of reality. And yet, they did not advance. They did not conquer. They simply waited. A council in chaos. On Vorth Prime, the capital world of the Galactic Council, panic had become a way of life. The fleet had been their greatest weapon, their ultimate defense. Now, it was nothing but a whisper in forgotten records. Chancellor Valus stood in the central chamber, surrounded by frantic diplomats and warlords. This is impossible. One roared. A trick. A mass hallucination. They altered history itself. Another countered, voice shaking. The fleet never even. He stopped, as if forgetting his own words. His mind fractured as he realized he couldn't even remember the fleet anymore. Chancellor Valus gripped the edges of his podium. He could still remember. That meant the humans wanted him to. A warning. A final, terrifying message. We can erase you. But first, we want you to watch. A message from the void. Then, without signal, without request, a transmission broke into the chamber. The human specter stood there, his form flickering like a ghost. We were forgotten. Now, you will be too. The council chamber froze. You erased our people. You crushed our worlds. You thought we were gone. The specter leaned closer, as if staring into Valus' very soul. But we remember. A wave of static washed over the chamber. The walls trembled, lights flickered, and in the air itself, faces appeared. Not holograms. Memories. Humans. Cities. Fleets. A civilization that should have been dead. Valus felt his breath leave him. The images were reshaping history itself, burning themselves into reality like scars in the fabric of time. And worst of all, he saw his own world burning in those memories. The first disappearance. Across the council planets, the effects began. Worlds vanished from records. Laws, treaties, entire species that had thrived under the council's rule were simply never there. The council's archives failed, unable to recall their own history. Their laws collapsed. Governments descended into madness as entire civilizations found their origins rewritten. And through it all, the human specter spoke. You thought you were gods. You thought history was yours to shape. But we have returned. And now we will show you what it means to be truly forgotten. The transmission cut out. A deadly silence filled the chamber. And for the first time in the council's reign, true fear took hold. Darkness crept over the stars. Not a physical shadow, but a terrifying absence. A slow, deliberate erasure of everything the Galactic Council had built. Planets vanished from records. Star systems blinked out of existence, as if they had never been there. Leaders forgot their own laws, their own history, even their own names. And yet, somewhere deep inside them, they could feel it. Something was taking them apart. The collapse begins. Chancellor Valus stood in the ruins of what was once the council's grand hall. The walls, once filled with banners of power, were blank. The statues of past rulers were gone. He clenched his trembling fists. "This is impossible," he whispered. "We are the masters of the galaxy. This cannot be happening." But it was. Reports came flooding in. The planet Wilara never existed. The Vakari Empire, no one could remember them. The fleets that once guarded the core worlds, gone, not destroyed, forgotten. And worst of all, the humans were not even attacking. They were rewriting reality itself. The last war fleet. On the outer rim, Admiral Corvath, one of the last remaining warlords of the Council, watched the chaos unfold from his flagship, the Vortex Fang. "Prepare the fleet," he growled. "We strike now." His second-in-command hesitated. "Admiral, our ships are disappearing. Then we fight before we vanish too," Corvath bellowed. "If the humans want us gone, let them face us in battle." And so the last fleet of the Council gathered, thousands of ships burning toward the source of the anomaly, toward the fleet of phantom human warships. But as they approached, the stars shifted, and suddenly, there was nothing. The Vortex Fang was alone. The fleet was gone. No wreckage, no distress calls, no memories. Admiral Corvath's mind fractured as realization took hold. They hadn't just lost the battle. They had never been in it at all. The final message. The Council's capital world, Vorth Prime, stood in silence. No ships moved. No voices spoke. Then, a final transmission echoed across the dying stars. You erased us. Now we erase you. Chancellor Valus screamed, but the sound never came. The world around him shattered, his palace dissolving into the void. He tried to run, but there was nothing left to run to. And then, there was nothing at all. The galaxy had no name anymore. There were no rulers, no empires, no war records, no mention of the Great Galactic Council. The archives were blank, not erased, empty, as if nothing had ever existed. And at the center of it all, they remained. The fleet, the last relic of humanity, floated in the void, watching the silent ruins of what was once an empire. The final witness. Deep within the remnants of a dying station, a lone survivor, Kylo Ren, awoke in horror. He could not recall what had happened, only that something was missing. Everything felt wrong. His people, gone. His homeworld, forgotten. His own name barely clung to his mind. And then he saw them. The black warships, lined in perfect formation against the stars, waiting. A voice, cold, human, and ancient, echoed through his mind. You are the last one. Kylo Ren fell to his knees. You erased us. We returned the favor. He screamed, but no sound came. No one remained to hear it. The final transmission. Across the ruins of the once mighty galactic empire, one last signal pulsed through the empty void. A message, a warning, a memory. We were forgotten once, but we remember everything. We do not forgive. We do not forget. And now neither will you, because there is nothing left to remember. With that, the last of the human warfleet vanished into the dark, leaving behind only silence.